So as I mentioned, we want this to be interactive, and we labeled this as a town hall for that reason. But we want to spend just a little bit of time talking about some of the lessons from the pandemic, spend the majority of the time talking about some of today's biggest challenges. Then, of course, hopefully we'll wrap it up on a positive note, not about the challenges, but looking to the future and some of the opportunities. So for each of you, I'd just like to, starting with, I'll start with you, Randy. You know, a lot has been said about the pandemic as the great accelerator, right? It accelerated a lot of trends and things that maybe we would not have seen for another 5-10 years. Things like the work from home revolution, digitization, a lot of things. What was accelerated from your viewpoint at Hilton? Do you think that as a result of the pandemic?
Well, that's a big question, first of all. And first, thank you guys. How about this weather, huh? Fantastic. I hope everyone had a good time yesterday. It was good. The accelerators. Well, the world certainly has changed, and working remote is obviously something. I mean, when I showed up at the corporate office, I had found out that half the people had moved to California and all the cool places that they were. So I think all of us are going to have to kind of lean into this new work remote, and we're going to have to figure it out. But we're in the people business. So we've got to look people in the eye, and we're in the hospitality business. And so ultimately, we've had to accelerate a lot of different things. So around food and beverage, for example, we used to have the old traditional food and beverage. Sorry about the golf cart in the backdrop here.
Can you stop, sir?
We, first things that we did coming into the pandemic were that we wanted to protect kind of our customers. We wanted to protect our business. And we wanted to protect our assets. So the first thing, that's what we had to do. And so we had to quickly learn how to shut hotels down. So, I mean, my God, we shut down 90% of our portfolio. And now these are real live running buildings that have a heart and a soul. And to shut the soul down, the first thing we had to learn was how to do that efficiently and effectively. And project management took over. And then ultimately, after we shut them down, we kind of came through the pandemic and coming out of it. What's changed permanently is going to be housekeeping, right? We used to just kind of have this daily housekeeping. We're looking at opt-in only. We're really moving to this digital revolution where people are going to kind of check in, obviously with their phones, and we're looking at things more remotely on the phone too, like we call a food and beverage now. It's going to be a knock and drop, right? People used to just wheel a cart in your room, and they used to drop the food off and pick it up. So I think from a technology perspective, we're going to see things differently. We're testing robotics at Hilton. We're looking at all kinds of things. We opened several hotels. We've got our friends from Virgin in the audience. We opened a Virgin recently, and they're looking at technology at that hotel, right? Looking at some different pieces behind it all. So I think ultimately in our world, the things that aren't going to change are it's going to be work remote from the corporate perspective. It's going to be non-traditional food and beverage delivery. It's going to be QR codes, and it's going to be just a different day, right, to the customer's experience for the next generation.
So that's going to stick. And just, I guess, for some context for the audience, can you just tell your role within Hilton?
So my role, Senior Vice President, Operations, New Development. I'm kind of a catch bucket. So I pitch deals for the management company. I operate housekeeping, engineering, leasing, retail, some other operations around the company. And then ultimately, so I work for our president out of the world headquarters in McLean.
Yep.
And so many of you and I have worked together in different roles over the years. Nice to be with you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. So Menno, I guess similar question, but can you also, before we start, can just tell the audience your role with the citizenM?
Yeah, so I'm Menno Hilberts with citizenM. I had the project development side on the West Coast. We're originally a Dutch company. I moved 5 years ago from Amsterdam to Seattle. I think for us, like for everybody, the pandemic has really forced us to reevaluate our lives. To think, what are we doing commuting 2 hours a day? Is our jobs, are those really meaningful jobs? And how do we become more efficient and how do we have a better work-life balance? And that is still playing out in real time, right? We see that for all of us that we're making those choices. I think the staff and the clientele of our hotels will be way more demanding and ask those questions, and you want to be really deliberate in what you have to offer. So for a lot of us in hotel land, it's going to be a big shakeup. And I think this is just the beginning. We did not see we didn't close any hotels down like you did. We did spend, 3 to 6 months trying to figure out how to survive like anybody else. But we quickly transitioned into future planning, accelerated quite a bit of IT, platforms that put the customer central to really think about what the needs of the customer for the future will be, to have a seamless interface. You can order anything you want on Amazon in one click. Why spend 15 minutes waiting in line to check into a hotel? Right? That's not going to be acceptable anymore. Why have a P-tax unit go off in the middle of the night that sounds like a truck stalled in your bedroom? It's not going to be acceptable for the hotel of the future. So all these things you really need to put front of your development plans. For us, we have a fairly new portfolio already. That's less of a concern, but I definitely think for the hotel industry, those choices you want to accelerate and move on.
And for people not familiar with citizenM, you have 5 properties in the U.S. and how many globally?
So we have 25 globally, European, and we're mostly, and 5, 6 in the U.S., and we've got 10 under development and want to grow at anywhere between 5 to 10 new build, typically ground up construction in the major cities in the U.S.
Okay, great. And Mark, for you at Sands, of course, could you share a little bit about your background, not your background, your role, and obviously Sands now specifically with your projects in Asia, and obviously then to the question of what was accelerated for you in your role.
Okay. I'm Mark Boekenheide with Las Vegas Sands. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Real Estate Development. At Sands, without repeating some of the things these two gentlemen have said about technology and how we're going to do business, probably the biggest change we saw was how the development team works. For those of that don't know really our portfolio, we're in 3 locations, Las Vegas, Singapore, and Macau. And I was spending 2 weeks every month on the plane going back and forth to Asia. That stopped. My team and I stopped traveling like on a dime, and all of a sudden we had to figure out how to continue to do projects while we weren't there. And what it meant was we needed to think how to work differently, not just how to work better on Zoom calls and team and all of that, but we had a $2 billion project in construction in Macau. How do we continue to monitor that and design that and deliver that when the corporate-based team can no longer go over there? And it meant we had to rethink how we do projects. We had to build a local team very quickly, both in Singapore and in Macau, so those projects continued on without stopping. We didn't shut anything down. The only time we closed down was when the government shut us down. So 3 months in Las Vegas, casino was shut down, the property was empty. And then we've had several times like that in Singapore and Macau as well. The one advantage, obviously, was when you're in the middle of a construction project and you have no customers, it means you can work 24 hours a day, make all the noise, create all the dust, don't worry about paint fumes. You can actually execute the renovation projects quicker. We wish that we were ready to jump into 2 years ago renovation projects in Singapore because we had such a low occupancy point at the time. So for us, it was really, how do we do our business different? I'm looking forward to this as being a solution to me not having to travel every month for 2 weeks. This could be something really good for us as we learn how to do projects differently and build a strong design and development team in each of our geographic locations.
That's a great for this first segue right now, because I'm sure when we ask you guys, what are your biggest challenges, I'd like to just can you guys just shout out, what are some of your biggest challenges right now? Labor? Anything else? Supply chain. So those are the 2 main things I know we want to spend some time on here. So when you're talking about doing things different, more efficiently, that's one thing. But when we have a lot of the uncertainty right now, I think that, no one has a crystal ball, but they're saying that these supply chain challenges are going to be with us maybe for the next 18 to 24 months. So I'm curious to know, just using each of you, maybe Menno, if I can talk to you for a second, what is your outlook on that, and how are you dealing with a lot of the supply chain challenges at the moment?
Yeah, so I think we just have to weather the storm, right? It's a pendulum that goes from supply to demand, and that's going to balance out, whether that's 6 months or 16 or 24, I don't know. Nobody knows. My only advice to the suppliers and the contractors out there is simple, is do what you say and say what you do. Just communicate and be upfront about it. We can deal with problems, but we can deal with being bullshitted, basically. And that's what a lot of us in the industry still do. Just spin a story, don't do that. Just be straight and say, you're not going to get your chairs for the next 6 months. Sure, we'll find another solution, but don't spin it and just be straight.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd like to get a response from someone on the supplier side of things.
So Donald Decker with IEC Air Conditioning had a similar conversation with project manager in Hawaii, and really it went from our local representation all the way to me at the factory, and he said same thing. I gotta know, just tell me what it is, I can deal with it. Yeah. Part of the problem that we see, right, is a motor supplier telling us your motors are going to be there in 10 days. So I tell you I'm building your air conditioning stuff in 15. We call the motor supplier, 10 days. Yes, 10 days. Motor 5 days out. Yep, on. The next day, yep, you're still good. Well, you know what happens? The day that it's supposed to show up to us, it doesn't, right? And then we're having to call you and tell you we didn't build your stuff. And I think there are certain owners that get it and understand that. And I think there are certain suppliers that get it and understand it. But I see that on a daily basis communicating to my customers and my customers' customers, because we're getting claimed force majeure. We're not getting the information, right? People are basically telling us the same thing. So just, I think most people are doing the best that they can.
But there's that lyric: "Is the best you can good enough?" I'm not saying it, but I'd like to know: does anybody have any from a vendor base here? Anything that you've been dealing with or having conversations with owners? No one wants to chime in.
So
Randy,
I'll take a little bit of this. So, it's great being here with everybody because it's really just that connection point. And a friend of ours in the back quoted this. He said, "Hey, look, Randy, let's not let the government dictate what we're trying to do." We were talking about another part of the world, and so, our core business in this room is what we do. We're in the hospitality business. That's my core business. I'm not, but as a byproduct, I've become the second largest restaurateur in the world. We operate a GPO, and I'll speak to the purchasing side at Hilton that's worth billions of dollars. Now, we know we have right now that a backlog, obviously, goods and services until, I'm not going to talk about inflation yet, but there is a pressure on all of us that there's a lot of money out there. The pockets are full, and everybody wants to kind of make that investment now. So ultimately, I think you're right. Like, we need to be realistic about the timing and the shipping, of what's happening. I mean, I've got several projects like you all do. We're watching the ports. We've got to free up LA. But why is LA? It's the second issue that is why LA, you can't move the trucks out. They've got the stuff in the port, but they don't have the guys to drive it, right? So we as a world, I'm not saying we enabled it, but we did give fruitful forgiveness over the course of time with funding and mechanisms that ultimately might be expiring now. And then what we're seeing, and again, I'm kind of talking to both sides of this, is the labor piece. When some of the money runs out, people will come back. They'll get back in the trucks. We're incentivizing. We have good people, right? They have really good heart and soul. So ultimately, we've got to solve the labor issue because that's the pinch point on everything, right? So it's looking at the gig economy. What are we doing at Hilton? Same day pay. We are number 3 great places to work this year. We've been number 1 for years and years and years. Steady hand on the wheel. We heard it from you guys. You didn't let any of your people go. It's going to be about keeping those people and retaining those people, and hopefully they will stay with you. But until we solve this labor issue, and the way we're going to have to solve the labor issue, obviously, is with creativity and innovation, right? So, rooms is the biggest thing in our world. I run housekeeping. I'm looking at robotic vacuums. I'm looking at anything I can to relieve that piece to get those people some more issues. So if you really look at what's happening, and you see it in restaurants, right? Even in your hometown. How many of you guys have walked in your hometown and it says, hey, don't complain about the time because Bob doesn't have anybody. I mean, it's a reality of where we are. And I think that, so from a production perspective, be it an ECM motor, be it whatever you're making, obviously we have this issue with the international ports. We ultimately, and will it free itself up? There were 85 or 90 ships waiting to get in the LA port last time we looked on the app. And, there's things that are just not in our control. Yeah. And will it resolve itself over the months to come until the labor issue is mitigated somewhat? Now we're seeing it, it's better, but the world's kind of come back a little faster too than all of us had anticipated. So it's hard to run 0 occupancy and 100% occupancy and then run 10% occupancy on the midweek. So we've had to kind of shift from a labor perspective, from a goods and services perspective, and we're doing what we can, right? If I can't get the linen from China, I'm going to get it from Guatemala, I'm going to get it out of Mexico. And we all have to be creative, and we know that. Those of you who are procure in country, right? May pay a little more, we'll figure it out.
Thanks, Randy. Before we jump over to labor, Mark, I just want to talk to you on the sourcing front. We had a conversation, and you were sharing kind of some of the things that you guys were doing to kind of get in front of that. Can you share with the audience, and also again to kind of explain some of the projects that you have right now that are waiting to get moving again?
Well, like I said earlier, it would have been great to have been ready to jump in and start some of these CapEx projects when occupancy went from 95% to 20%. Obviously, those of you that design know that you can't design in about 3 weeks. You can't go procure it in 2 weeks, and you can't start construction like 2 weeks later. It's unfortunate. Our properties typically run 95+% occupancy. So it's very hard to do CapEx projects in properties that are essentially 100% full all the time. Our biggest problem, we're sitting here with no ability to pull labor in. Not in Las Vegas, that's kind of a different story, but in Singapore and in Macau, labor, not just getting the goods, but labor is a huge issue for us. We are ready to deploy $700 million in CapEx work in Singapore, where the projects are designed, they're ready to go, there's no manpower. And part of this is the reaction that Singapore has had to the cases that have started to spike, is a lot of it has come from the foreign worker dorms. And all these workers are from Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, countries that have had tremendous cases of COVID. And a lot of them went home at the beginning of the pandemic, and they can't come back. And we look for, right now we could use 2,500 workers in Singapore on our projects, and we can't get them. They're just not there. And when the spigot gets turned back on, the first thing that's going to happen is the government is going to turn on all their big projects, like a new airline terminal and all these big civil projects that they shut down as well. So we're going to be really fighting for labor. We've got lots of contractors that are saying, I'll take the job, but I can't guarantee a price or a schedule. I'll tell you what they are when I get the manpower. Hey, I'll sign them right up. So it's a real problem for us. We are confronted with that first and foremost. If you can't get labor, it doesn't matter if you can get the goods or the product, if you can't get the labor. So we're really struggling a lot to try and get the labor to execute some big projects in Singapore. We got very lucky in Macau because we had this project that said $2 billion repositioning. It blazed on through the whole pandemic. We did lose some labor. You get allocations by the government based on, you go in and you submit a project and they say, okay, you think you need 300 guys for this, we'll give you 200, right? So we found a way to get through that, but Singapore is a big problem, and that's where we are really ready to deploy a lot of capital. So it's really manpower for us right now. We will be confronted with the supply of goods too at some point, but as I said, until you have the manpower to do the job, you don't need the goods.
But it's also here in the U.S. Yeah. We have a couple of projects in construction where we simply can't find the people. We offer to work overtime, nobody's interested anymore, so it's genuine. It's not just Macau and Singapore. Yeah. It's here too.
So on that note, I'd like to talk to our friends at the Beam team over here. They're a national general contractor. How have you guys been managing, that on that front?
Yeah, the labor issue is a big issue, and finding skilled labor on top of that. So many of our partners have moved on to other professions because of the cycle and because of the dips and things. They found that there's more stability and there's more opportunities away from the construction market. So we're finding a skill gap and we're finding a labor gap both.
We have to incentivize, make it deeper too. So we're reaching into the trade schools, going back to the high schools, whatever happened to the old American dream, right? You come out, maybe you're not going to go to college. So we're we're tapping into resources that we have not tapped in that are non-traditional. I mean, oh, come on, housekeeping is the hardest job in the world, right? So we're trying to make it more fruitful and exciting for people. So we're going to have to just get them early, get them in, incentivize, because it's a knife fight to find the labor, and people are kind of stealing labor here and there until it's done.
I have an audience question down here.
So the supply chain issue is not really going away. Do you think there'll be a paradigm shift in where we manufacture and buy things moving forward? In the hotel business, we buy most of our furniture from outside of the country, from Asia, because of the price point, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you could go through everything that we buy, and the supply chain thing is insane. Do you think there'll be a paradigm shift and we'll get some manufacturing back in the United States?
So I will give you a very specific example. I'm in we'll call it or not, the hotel flip business. And I have to flip assets in 90 days. That's what I do. And, to procure, we have to procure in the States. We've gone to some new manufacturers in Ohio. We've gone, obviously we all know what happens in North Carolina. We're going to residential folks who can have the commercial component. Obviously it comes with a little bit of a cost. We're shifting what we can possibly, some of that stuff out of Mexico. But, that's the only way until we free up the shipping, until we kind of figure out what's happening in China. We're also shipping to different countries too. So Korea versus China. So first, if we can't get it out of China, we'll go to Korea. So we're going to do what we can to try to get our international waterways opened up to the fastest and most efficient supplier. But ultimately, in the States, we've had to lean into some suppliers, and I don't think that's going to go away. I actually like it, right? I think it's good to keep it in our home country.
I want to just pause for a second here. If anybody has any specific questions, you could just raise your hand, let us know, and we'll throw them up there. All these challenges, of course, bring new ideas to the tables, but obviously looking at ways to do things smarter and more efficient. So a big topic as part of HotelSpaces, it has been for the past few years, is embracing modular construction. Menno, you guys are doing all modular on your projects. Can you kind of share a little bit about that and why you're doing your projects that way?
Yeah, so modular for us was really part of our DNA when we started, and that was because concrete or architects in Amsterdam had this idea of a guest room the size of a 20-foot container that we're going to manufacture centrally and ship all over the world. That was then our naive vision in 2007, and little did we know that entitlements and construction code is different in certain cities globally. But we still very much have that one guest room type, and we built half our rollout on a modular platform. I'd love to sit here and say that that's going to solve all your problems in the future and it's going to reduce cost and make life simple. The honest answer is that's probably 10 years out at best. And that's if we all step up into that space, which I currently don't see happening. For us, it's been definitely a hard leading edge move, and we keep doing it. And it's fantastic if it works. Like we just finished a property in downtown LA, and you see it stacking in the whole building above podium just basically goes up in 2 months' time. So it's great to see, but it's definitely creating some arm wrestling with local jurisdictions and challenges to put this thing together. So anybody that wants to move in that space, I have a lot of time for you and I'll help you, but it's not a simple space to operate in. So I'm sure Denny will talk about that in more detail later. But
Do you feel that, though, since you're doing your projects modular now, that's actually benefited you through the pandemic?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, hugely. Although the risk involved, we had to have a California state licensed inspector in our factory in China, and we were able to move him over there a week before the whole thing closed down. So if we'd have missed that window, we'd have had basically a stalled project.
So the biggest thing, we've done a couple modulars, and the biggest thing on modular that we've done, and we've done the bathroom, we've done the full room over the years, union labor market, huge cost savings. Cost, scope, and schedule. That's what it's all about, right? So if you look at the cost, you look at the schedule certainty, and then the scope. It's just obviously the slab tolerances when you put it all together.
Got a question here for you?
Did you find it hard to find lending for the modular?
Oh, on our end, what we've done 3 or 4 different hotels, and it's all been fun. The lenders have not had an issue. Really, they really care about is the scope and the schedule. We did White's, really beautiful warehouse that did it, plug and play all together. It's actually, they kind of liked it, right? You can go out to the warehouse, you can see the room fully built out, and then you just kind of pull it out on trucks. So the problem that we had in all of our modular, Embassy Suites Seattle was modular, was the fact that when you start to stack them, slab tolerances, and then does it really come together well? But lenders have not had an issue. And that was all EB5 funding back then. I don't know if you guys know what EB5 funding is, but it was kind of, that's gone away. So now it's, and the lenders, it depends on credit-worthy people.
I would say it's an issue.
Yeah.
We've had to just prop it up with equity guarantees just to make it work. But it's, especially if you do full volumetric modular like we do, yeah, a lot of funders struggle to understand the risk involved.
Yeah, it's a timing thing, right? You got to
Yeah.
put up a 50% deposit before
Yeah.
they even start the work, and
Especially
that's what I'm struggling
if it's
with right now.
overseas, right? Now a bank has to put a deposit for a Chinese company.
Yeah.
What's going to happen if they default? Those are serious questions. So.
You said you had a lot of time for someone working on one, so I'm
Yeah.
going to grab some of your time another time.
Thank God they didn't fall off the ship, too. These ships have been losing containers. You lose a couple of rooms, you're in trouble.
So on that topic of project delivery, Mark, when you're looking at future projects now, are you exploring any type of alternative delivery methods?
Well, we have to, right? And we should be doing this regardless of sort of all the impacts from COVID. Our core business, right, is gaming. And that's where we make our money. We have lots of guest rooms, 12,000 rooms in Macau and 7,000 in Las Vegas. But gaming is, the economic engine that drives our projects. And so the quicker you can get the gaming component delivered and open, the better. You're generating revenue. So we are starting to look at how to condense schedules we've looked at some aspects of prefab. Our modules are basically too big. We look at like 15, 16-foot wide rooms sort of as a standard. Our keys are trending much larger. Our new project in Singapore is a 1,000 square foot suite is our standard key as a starting point. And these are all tailored towards a very high-end luxury gaming customer. But what we're doing is trying to figure out how to kind of take the design and the construction piece and mush it together, right? Design build. We've never done this as a company. It's something I've done in my previous life as an architect. So I understand the challenges. But we have to look at that as we go forward into some of these projects. Certainly, as we try to deploy capital in the States, is how quick can we bring these projects to fruition. Some of the places we've looked have requirements. Like, if you go into certain places, they award you a license and they say you need to be generating revenue in 24 months. You got to move fast. And our projects are not little. These aren't 500-room hotels. Those are big for some people. But we're doing 3,000 rooms at a time. That's a small hotel by Vegas standards. So how do you deliver something that is 2.5, 3 million square feet as quick as possible? If I can take a project that is 42 months and I can condense that to 32 months, that is a huge amount of revenue that we're generating early. And it allows me actually to do a bigger and better project because I can take some of that money that I'm generating and put it into a higher quality product. So we are looking at that. My construction guy is a little hesitant to embrace design build because he sees a lot of risk. I think there is ways to control it. Good bridging documents early from the contractor and the design team so that you know as an owner what you're getting. So you might spend a little bit more money because there's a little bit of risk. You might have a few change orders because certainly we as owners tend to change our mind a lot at Sands. So what we have to do is sort of control our constant urges to change the project as it goes into construction and through the design process. But we are looking at alternate methods of delivering projects.
Okay. Danny Foster, I'd like to get your take. as an architect, kind of coming out of the pandemic now? I know obviously you're all in on modular, but what are your just overall thoughts in terms of how projects can be more efficient moving forward?
We're just happy you guys are starting projects up again. it's been a rough couple of months. I mean, I'll speak to the modular stuff later, but I think everything that's been said is absolutely the case, that it's harder, it's not more straightforward, it's not the silver bullet. There's amazing promise in the future, but there's a tremendous amount of work that has to be done in the short term on this side of the table, on that side of the table, to codify the process. So it isn't a bunch of pioneers and nut jobs trying amazing projects, but doing so with tremendous risk. And so we still got, I think, quite a bit of time to get things more stabilized in that regard. But there are smart people in the space. I mean, thank God, citizenM, you guys have stayed the course. I think without people like you, it'd be difficult to suffer some of the setbacks and still keep going. But yeah, I'll pass it back to you.
One thing, Michael, Singapore, and some of this can be driven by local governments. So Singapore has a very strong program where they don't just require you, or they require you. They don't incentivize you. They don't encourage you. They actually require you to do a certain percentage of your construction as prefab, whether it's prefab bathrooms or it's prefab components of corridor ceilings where it's framed up and it has the ductwork and the piping put in it, and you come in and drop it in place in pieces. And mainly this is a reaction to their labor challenges, because it's really problematic. So they have a requirement. We have a requirement in our development agreement for our new tower to do a certain percentage of the work off-site and bring it in and install it almost as prefab. And as I said, the challenge for us is a lot of our stuff we're building it's not container size. You know, you can't bring it in on a truck and drop the guest room in because it's 15 or 16 feet wide. The bathrooms we've been looking at, our bathrooms are all 5-fixture, very, very big, luxurious bathrooms and dressing areas. So again, some of this is just the ability to create some of these things in a prefab basis and be able to actually truck them in and deliver them. But it is. I think we're going to see it in perhaps some other places driven by local governments.
So an all modular Venetian's not happening anytime soon?
No, not anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I want to tag on to the design and build narrative. I think working on a modular platform has really forced us to bring owner, architect, and contractor together. And I think that's something that we, as an industry, should embrace more. Traditionally, we're all owner there, architect there, and contractor very far away. There's a lot of distrust, and historically, we need to really bridge that gap and sit, three of us at the table, and that's going to drive successful project delivery in the future.
You know, we have a big one. I'm working on 1,000 keys at the Georgia World Congress Center right now. It's owned by the city. It's connected. It's going to be one of the most beautiful Signia hotels that we're ever going to build. You know, part of that is partnering with the city and getting the right people from the city on board, the right CDs, DDs right out of the gates. It's all glass. It's a beautiful building, proper planning, proper city. And we're putting, you know, we have to have 40% local, 50% local workers to work. So with the city's backing and the Georgia World Congress Center's backing, we've been actually, and many of you have done work in Atlanta, you know how difficult it is. We've been very successful in that process of finding people, and this thing's coming out of it's coming off the podium now. We're opening a hotel with Related in downtown LA across from the Disney, and that also is a partnership with the city. So I do believe that these cities are starting to realize that, and they're, you know, it's the old days. The fire marshal will walk up and shut you down and keep you shut down. We've all been through that same in song and dance. So I think we're educating the cities as well, gateway cities, other people as we build, because they understand they want their economy to come back, and it's their money too that we're playing with in a lot of cases. So
I have a different question. What are you guys seeing in terms of guest interaction? Like, what is the guest expecting in terms of all of these things with COVID and all the realities of today? You talked about a 15-minute check-in process, but walk us through what you guys are seeing in the market today on your end.
Yeah, I think the guests are simply expecting more, right? They're going to be more deliberate in their stays, right? They have a lot of choices out there, and it's not going to be the simple commodity. It's going to be the product that's a niche or that leaves a lasting experience. those are the products that people want to go to, right? So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening here. Meow Wolf and the Loge concept. So one of the few I read, which I think is interesting. You really focus on a specific target customer and make that work, and you can explore that further, come up with crazy ideas, and that's not going to be for the masses, but it's what a lot of people will expect.
So the guests in our world, guests today are tied to an experience. Years ago, you'd sign up for Marriott Rewards, Hilton Rewards, and you were loyal to the brand. Guests we're finding today are tied to the experience, and the expectation of the guests is to make that experience special. It's a different crowd, and X, Y, Z, whatever we're on today, whatever generation that we're catering to today. And then ultimately, remember, we protected our guests ultimately coming into the pandemic, and we protected our team members. So, but the guest expectations today are very high. They're paying really ginormous rates. Last week, we ran 80% at the highest RevPAR index we've ever run over the weekend in all of our hotels. Unfortunately, our guest satisfaction scores in all of our companies are down a bit. So we're at a bit of a crossroads here when it comes to the guest experience. Many of you know they're paying more, receiving less, and we have to figure out what the balance is going to be, right? We have to make it experiential. If you go to the restaurant here and it's closed at 2 o'clock, you're pissed off, and I'm pissed off. So
there were a lot of people that were unhappy they couldn't watch their football games yesterday.
So ultimately, we have to anticipate the guest needs. We're in the hospitality business, even if you just put a bucket of beer cooler out, so we have to figure out how to anticipate those needs and not forget that we're all making a lot of money today because of the fact that our index is up over 19, but we cannot forget that the experience. And I think that we've taken a step back at Hilton to make sure that we're mandating the experience for the customer.
Michael, can I just tag on that? This group probably has been traveling a bit. I've been surprised about how little you get when you buy a guest room now. Right, I've been in a hotel that had no water in the room. You know that you can't get room service. You don't get daily housekeeping service in a lot of hotels. What I fear is that, and this is a good question for some of the panel here, is that going to be the norm moving forward? And it's going to be like flying on Allegiant Airline. You get a cheap seat, but you want to pick the seat, it costs extra. You want to bring a bag, it costs extra. You want to do this, it costs extra. Is that what's going to happen in the hotel industry, that all these things that we used to take for granted are now going to be a la carte? And the room rate's not going to be any cheaper. It's going to be as expensive as it was, but now you want all those things that you used to get, and they're all extra. I want daily service in my room. It's another $25 a day. Is that where we're headed? I fear that because we've scaled so far back, that some hotel brands might take this as sort of the new norm.
Randy, so when you're having those conversations in Virginia, are you guys seeing
You
these numbers going, hey?
Since I had these conversations from day one when the pandemic started, and I've spent every day on it, you're right. I'll be honest with you. Some of the largest owners in the world I've spoken to, and they've asked to charge for housekeeping. They've asked to not bring back daily housekeeping. We're bringing back daily housekeeping for luxury because it's just on demand. We're tracking this thing. What we're going to do, we're going to lean into the app, right, and have you opt in, or instead of opting out. So there's things that we cannot bring it back to the way it used to be. It's just going to be unacceptable. First of all, we don't have the labor to do it. None of us do. And then if we can create the experience, overlay some technology, overlay some of these robotics we're looking at, overlay the fact that, like, I went to a hotel with my family. I wanted housekeeping service. No one else did, so I lost. So ultimately, we're going to have to figure out what the customer wants and their families want. But we cannot go back to what we were. And now what were we, Randy? We were heavy. And we have to figure out how to streamline it. We have to be thoughtful. We have a lot of unions that we're negotiating with in the world. I mean, we have gateway cities like New York and San Francisco, and many of us who have hotels in New York. It's very difficult, right? We can't go back to 10 credits. We've got to figure out how to make it experiential without you going into your room and not having water. We did pull everything out. You had to pull everything out. And then now we're going to layer it back in thoughtfully.
So on the topic of experience, Meow Wolf, Vince is going to give a talk later today. But Napoleon's sitting here. He's with Atari Hotels, which is a very experiential product. So Napoleon, can you tell us what you're planning?
Yeah, it kind of came by chance. My background is I bring back old brands, and I brought back Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it was kind of funny. Nobody wanted Ninja Turtles, but they didn't know there was such a base out there that are fans. So the same thing with Atari. What you're finding right now is when I go to Comic-Con, that sells out in 30 minutes. You go to E3, South by Southwest, because there is a core audience out there that has a lifestyle, and nobody's accommodating it at all. But what you're seeing with gaming is the prequel to what's coming with a metaverse, and I see no hotels ready for it. Right now, you have to accommodate the digital hospitality, and right now, a lot of the younger ones, 40-50% of their brain is in the other side, and these hotels are not accommodating it, so they're not even going to hotels. So the first time when I started trying to hook up, a simple PlayStation or anything, and 7 out of 10 places you can connect it, and these places don't leave without this stuff. So that's what we're doing. We're doing the two together. We're actually building an Atari hotel in Fortnite. So a lot of the assets you'll see you need in your room, instead of an extra, bigger shower room or whatever, you're going to have digital assets where you see a flying golden DeLorean in Fortnite. You're staying at the Atari hotel, and you're getting that asset. So you're getting a lot of digital assets that's more important and valuable to them on the other side. So that's kind of what Atari Hotel is. We're accommodating that new group of people coming that need those digital assets that are synchronized with their physical ones.
Yeah, you're going to kill it. I'm convinced. Products like this.
Are you going to have water in the room, though?
That's
Red Bull,
audience,
Monster Energy drink.
Yeah. So if you think about it, so Marriott has 30 brands, we have 18 brands. That's a very experiential experience that you're creating. That's a certain niche of a customer that ultimately, and we applaud you, right? So we have to figure out how you can get into our engine, right? Plug in something like that, right? So, but I doubt that some of the larger brands are going to probably create that. It might not have the longevity that we feel is necessary to sustain 20 or 30 years.
So we're up about the last 10 minutes here. I do want to just, again, reference, if anybody has any specific questions for the panel or a challenge that you're currently, trying to solve that you'd like to throw to the group, you want to throw up your hand, anything? Come on, I know we got some challenges out there. All right, well, we'll come back to you guys in a minute. Tying things up, looking to the future, I know there's a lot of challenges as we're talking about here, but we don't want to end this discussion on a negative note. We want to think positively. So as you look to the future, there's a lot of uncertainty, and obviously there's been a lot of stress on all of us, right? Just trying to maintain and putting out fires and not understanding. How are you, when you look into the future, what are you optimistic about, Mark?
Well, I think we're looking at how to diversify our locations. This has been a big push for us in the last year, obviously, because being in 3 locations and all 3 of them tanking, not at the same time, but all of them tanking over the last 2 years at certain times, it has certainly told us that diversity of location is important for us. So we are looking at new opportunities in Asia. We've been chasing some opportunities here in the States. And we think that's going to be growth for us, and that's good because we're going to get out of this pandemic at some point. We're going to learn to live with it. It may never go away, but it might become the new norm, and we get back to sort of normal. Las Vegas came back so quick. It was so surprising for us. When we looked a year and a half ago at where we would be, we thought Vegas would take 2 years to come back. And at the beginning of the summer, it's like the spigot turned back on, and nobody could travel anyplace else in the world, so they all came to Vegas. And it has been amazing to see it come alive again. We thought that Singapore, which had handled the COVID so well in the early stages, that business would be totally back to normal. And now it's a real problem there too. And Macau is just, they turn it on, they turn it off, depending on how bad it is in certain provinces in China. A couple of provinces, they shut it down and they now restrict travel to Macau from those provinces. So the kind of visitation that we thought would gear back up, we had high hopes that Asia was going to come back a lot quicker. But it will come back. It's, Singapore is opening back up. We can now travel there. It will open up. What also helped us was we have in Macau and in Singapore a lot of retail, luxury retail. And we have made more, I believe in Singapore, we have the highest grossing retail in the world. And all it did was increase. So nobody came to gamble, they came to shop though. So our retail has really done great for us. So if we get the gaming customers back, we got a lot of new product. We're very excited about deploying a lot of money in Macau as our license gets renewed next summer. We have a lot of money to dump into Singapore that's ready to go if we can get some manpower. These things will all work their way out, and we'll be very busy in another year, I think. And with new opportunities in the States that we're looking at as well.
Great. Menno.
I'm extremely optimistic for the future of hospitality, but in a different way, maybe. I think most of the hospitality product that's out there now is sort of like a Toyota Camry, right? It's a good car, but not that impressive. And I think the future for us will be much more outspoken. We have to be the Teslas, the Rivians, or a very affordable small car. We can be that too, right? There is a place, I think, in the market for really low-end affordability, and people will like that too, but it's going to be a much more fragmented landscape. But the success of the future players will depend on our ability to be fast and agile and respond to new customer needs. So it's going to be an interesting landscape, but it's also going to be tough for some of us in that space, because we're going to need a lot of energy to reinvent ourselves and focus on the future. I think for us as citizenM, it's less of an issue because we're already very targeted and can keep doing what we're doing. But I think for somebody like in your space, it's going to require a lot of brainstorming and agility to move forward.
So don't be a Toyota Camry. That's the takeaway.
I'm joking. I don't want to diss Toyota, but I think that's a good, it's a good tagline.
Randy.
So for those of you who know me, the future is bright. I mean, I love it. I mean, think about it. We've been through SARS, we've been through 9/11, we always, if we keep a steady hand on the wheel, we always make it through. It always comes back. New York always comes back. I mean, I'm getting ready to flip the flag on a management hotel, the oldest hotel in New York, December 1st. So what makes me excited is the fact that the future is extremely bright. Over the past year at Hilton, we were dark on the Strip in Las Vegas. And we had, Elvis was playing at the Las Vegas Hilton, quite off the Strip, old school. We just opened 3,500 keys on the Strip. 3 different brands. We partner with our friends at Virgin, and we have a managed hotel right off the Strip, 1,500 keys in a beautiful asset. So the future is very, very bright at Hilton as far as the growth in the pipeline is concerned. I was down in Mexico. I was in LA last week before last in Mexico. 3,500 all-inclusives that we're looking at, dual branded, luxury branded. So we've got those coming into the pipe. We also at Hilton are looking to expand into all-inclusive. We had 0 all-inclusive at the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year we'll have 5,000 all-inclusive keys, and we're going to lean into it. We're also thinking outside the box. Right? We're in the hospitality business, so I wouldn't say the convention centers, cruise lines, whatever the heck's out there is not out of the way. We just want to grow organically, and we want to grow smart. There is certainly enough real estate out there. There's certainly enough opportunities for all of us. And then ultimately, I do think that if I look at our pipeline, it's never been stronger. Now we have to fight all the things that you talked about, but I'm seeing big gateway assets coming in, and we're going to change the skyline in Atlanta. We're going to change the skyline in Indianapolis. We're going to change the skyline in Miami soon enough. Going to change the skyline around now. And you guys are like, oh my God, what are you doing? So the goal, I think, is going to be ultimately that. And what I'm really excited about is the fact that we're building some pretty cool hotels, right? I've been working with the Houston Medical Center, looking at some anchor stuff, and as the world changes and we get to build some pretty exciting things, I think we're still strong, and it's not going to go away. I think these distressed assets that are out there, bringing people up, is going to be super exciting. So I just couldn't be more excited for the future.
All right, well, let's end there on a positive note. I want to thank you, the three of you, for participating in the panel.